I try to imagine a fellow smarter than myself, and then I try to think, what would he do?
Charge up your axons, ready your receptors, and shift your lobes into upper beta phase. You are listening to Smart Drug Smarts, the podcast dedicated to helping you optimize your brain with the latest breakthroughs in neuroscience, nootropics, and psychopharmacology.
Hello and welcome to Smart Drug Smarts. I'm your host, Jesse Lawler. I am shamefaced and mortified that it has been as long as it has since the last episode of Smart Drug Smarts, especially because I really thought that I was about to get on the weekly production bandwagon, but I've been doing some traveling the last couple of weeks, and as those of you who travel know, it can kind of gum up the best laid plans of mice and men, and my plans were not even among the best laid of either mice or men. So anyway, here it is. I'm just about to actually return home from my trip, and this is literally my last night before I fly out tomorrow morning, and I'm recording the first episode in weeks, but I'm going to try to churn through an episode. This is going to be a little bit of an unusual episode because it's actually, this one's going to be all about me. No guest on this, but what you are going to hear is in more or less real time, my very first experience with Aniracetam. I'm holding in my fingers a pill of Aniracetam. Just kind of looks like a normal gelatin pills. Yeah, so I'm about to pop this. It is about 6 o'clock in the evening. We'll check in with me throughout the next couple of hours and see subjectively what's going on with the old bigger brother, I guess, of Piracetam in the Racetam family. Got some other stuff as well. If you hang around till the end of the episode in the ruthless listener retention gimmick, I'm going to tell you my plans for the use of the smart drug desmopressin, which I also have acquired a supply of. And very different and interesting sort of thing, desmopressin. But I've actually got kind of a plan in mind for that one. Anyway, so all this and more. But first, let's do This Week in Neuroscience.
Smart Drug Smarts. This Week in Neuroscience.
Okay, so here at Smart Drug Smarts, it seems like we're always talking about, the aggressive college student that's trying to take some smart drugs to improve their brain, or the old person who's, is trying to stave off the decline of their cognition in their later years. But what about kids? What about the Smart Drug Smarts listeners that are maybe young parents, or parents of young children, and are trying to make sure that their kids get the best neurological head start they can? Well, according to the BBC this very week, they just released information on a study of more than 11,000 7-year-olds in the UK. They were studying these kids and their sleep patterns and their performance on standardized tests at the ages of 3, 5, and then 7. And it turns out, according to this, that kids that have more consistent bedtimes and earlier bedtimes tend to do better on standardized tests in math and reading than those that have sort of more erratic bedtimes or are going to sleep later. When I read about a study like this, I guess the first thing I think of is, okay, well, are there confounding factors here? Could it be that the kids that are going to bed at more erratic bedtimes, maybe they don't have quite as much discipline at home from their parents? Maybe their parents aren't as much into making sure that they're educated and then, they're latchkey children, or they're ignored in other ways, and thus their bedtime is kind of whenever they want it to be. But the researchers apparently had that same question, and they did everything that they could to try to isolate those variables within their study. And even after normalizing those things, it looks like more consistent bedtimes and earlier bedtimes for kids have definite benefits as far as the kids, how they performed on tests. So interesting stuff for those parents out there. And of course, it plays right into sort of the meta sub-theme of this podcast, which is that getting your sleep is important, even if your host doesn't do it himself.
Smart Drug Smarts.
Okay, so with no further ado, let's dive right into the interview, the auto interview, where I will interview myself about the effects of the Aniracetam that I just took. Let's do a little fast forward through time into the 15 minutes from now future. Okay, so for those of you keeping score at home, I'm taking 750 milligrams of Aniracetam. This is the brand name Anipro, made by Profound Product. Optimum supplements for optimal health. So those of you who want to try the play-at-home game, that's exactly what I just took. So 15 minutes in, of course, I'm not feeling anything yet, but that's where we're at. Also concurrent with this Anipro that I just took, I'm drinking a blueberry smoothie with several bananas in it and eating some almonds, both of which are thought to be brain food. But that's the kind of stuff I eat all the time, almonds and bananas, so I don't think that really matters. I don't think that's going to throw off this experiment, but just in the interest of full disclosure, there you go. Okay, so I'm just about 1 hour into this experiment now. It was about an hour ago that I popped that pill, and yeah, so far it's subtle if what I'm feeling should be attributed to Aniracetam, but I have felt pretty on point, pretty focused on the work that I'm doing. I'm doing some non-smart drug smarts related stuff, just answering a bunch of emails and plowing through some things that I need to do before I've got a 30-hour plane flight in front of me that takes off in, I guess, about 14 hours from now. So, yeah, it's going to be probably a late night for me. I'm probably going to be putting on a pot of coffee and burning into the wee hours because, as you can imagine, from a 30-hour plane flight, I'm going to be shifting over quite a few time zones. And at this point, trying to maintain a American West Coast sleep schedule is kind of irrelevant to me. So, but anyway, I'm not going to put on the coffee or do anything that would potentially interfere with the effects of the Aniracetam until this experiment feels like it's winding up towards a conclusion. I can sound off one way or another as to what the results have been for me. So yeah, just about 7 p.m. now, but initial findings, although subtle, are positive. I felt definitely pretty focused on what I'm doing, and we shall continue to see. Okay, so we are now 2 hours and 10 minutes, something like that. I haven't been doing this exactly on a stopwatch, but we're a couple hours into this whole Aniracetam thing. I guess so far the most interesting thing I've noticed that did feel a little bit like something I could point to and say, this effect felt like it was a druggy thing, was that probably about a half an hour ago, I noticed that I really was feeling a little bit like wired and kind of restless. I was quickly shifting between a lot of different tasks that I was doing. And that's kind of the last minute thing that one does when you're kind of getting ready for a long travel. At least you do if you're me. It's like kind of, battening down all the hatches to make sure you've answered emails and nothing's going to be, burning down the house while you're in air travel for a while. But anyway, I was just kind of shifting back and forth, trying to figure out, okay, what's a priority that needs to be done in the next 6 hours? What's a priority that needs to be done before I get on the plane? And what can wait and be done on the plane? All that kind of stuff. And I was sort of moving back and forth between things, not necessarily finishing one before I moved on to the next. And it just kind of was like, I might be in a little bit of a mental frenzy here. It wasn't a bad feeling, but it was kind of like it did feel weird. It felt like there was something going on that doesn't normally go on for me, even in a multitasking binge, which I'm sometimes known to do. So anyway, that's a little bit of a subjective thing. I definitely has not adversely affected my appetite because I've been noshing on all these almonds like the end of the world is coming and they're never going to sell almonds again. And what else can I say? Oh yeah, one of the things I'm planning on doing sometime in the next couple of hours is really doing a deep dive into the research on what Aniracetam does in other people's opinions, what the science says it does, what all these things. But I kind of wanted to not do that until after I'd sort of gone through the ride, so I can give an unbiased opinion of what I perceive it as doing to me without having those ideas kind of preconditioned based on what I just read. So anyway, we'll be getting to that. Also, I set up a last-minute impromptu ad hoc interview that we'll be doing in a little bit here with a buddy of mine who had a modafinil experience that I feel like is basically I laughed at him really hard when I heard about it, but I felt like it would be worth sharing with the rest of you listeners. So got that coming up in a little bit too. Okay, so we are now 4.5 hours into this little Aniracetam experiment, and I gotta say, although it's a subtle thing, I'm willing to say that this sort of passes the threshold that I would assign to. Do I notice that I'm on something that's having a neural effect versus could be any old day? I do feel like I've been able to sort of sustain a really high level of focus and attention and interest, I guess, in the stuff that I've been working on for hours upon hours now, at a pretty high level, something that would be, not impossible to achieve normally, but definitely kind of an unusually productive afternoon. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the Aniracetam, but on the other hand, I'm willing to say that it's been more likely than not, I would attribute how I've been feeling over the past couple of hours, few hours to the Aniracetam. So that's kind of cool. What else? Oh yeah, so I got a couple of emails in regards to the piracetam, the sibling chemical of Aniracetam episode that we had last time. And this was interesting. I wanted to bring this to everybody's attention. I got an email from one guy who said, I find that the powders that I buy online and mix with water, although it tastes repulsive, he's talking about piracetam now, give me a euphoric, relaxed feeling, but the pills that I buy in Colombia in 800 milligram tablets don't have the same effect or any effect. So that's definitely interesting. I'm also taking the 800 milligram piracetam tablets is what I've had. That's what we took with the mystery guest in the last episode. And yeah, weren't feeling any overt effects from. Got another email from a guy named Ian who essentially said the same thing. Hey, I love the show and we'll give it 5 stars. Hey, thanks. But I think the piracetam you bought may not be legitimate piracetam. Any experiments you have on the show, yourself or otherwise, should be through legit vendors of smart drugs, such as New Star Nootropics or Health Supplements Warehouse. Real vendors can also be sought out through www.reddit.com/r/nootropics. nootropics. I'll throw that link up on the show notes for this show. But anyway, yeah, just wanted to bring those couple of emails to people's attention that maybe there is legitimate cause for concern that the piracetam that we tried to overdose the last guest on might not have been legit piracetam. I don't know. Maybe I'll try getting it from a different place next time. Maybe we'll try getting it in powder form rather than pill form. Yeah, I mean, I'm as curious as all you guys out there. I just can't weigh in one way or another on the efficacy of the particular piracetam versus the holy grail of real piracetam, wherever that piracetam may be. Anyway, so moving right along, let's dovetail here into this ad hoc interview on yet another nootropic, modafinil. Jumping in there now. Okay, so I'm on with my friend Ben right now, and Ben is a relatively new user of modafinil. And anyway, Ben's de-virginizing with modafinil was a story worth sharing with the rest of the crowd. So Ben, I guess, with that preamble, take it away.
So I have heard a lot about modafinil, both from the podcast and also Dave Asprey and other folks online that speak highly of it. I guess Dave Asprey took it for 8 years solid, never had any ill effects. So it's good enough for him. It's good enough for me, I guess. I was really excited to give it a shot. And when I received my shipment, I inadvertently, in my exuberance and excitement for, to try this magical miracle drug, I misread the label, and it said 200 milligrams on the little square foil packet. But they were what it meant was 200 milligrams each. I thought there was, because there are 4 pills in the packet, that they were 50 milligrams apiece, totaling 200 milligrams. And so, 200 milligrams being the recommended dosage, I took all 4, not knowing that I was actually taking 800 milligrams. So luckily, it didn't have any permanent toxic effects on my brain, but it was a pretty harrowing, probably 10 hours.
So what was that like? I mean, were you bouncing through the walls like leaving Bugs Bunny holes or what?
Well, at first it was like it came on because I took it, I think, on an empty stomach, and it first started just washing over me like warm waves, and I just became really calm, and my thoughts became really crystal clear, and almost like the general effect of the drug for me is that it silences chatter in my head that I don't know is there. It's like there's always a radio playing, or thoughts in the back of my head, or chatter, or memories, or thoughts, like ambient noise in my head that I was just unaware existed until I took this stuff, and it like profoundly shuts all of that off all at once, and it becomes like this. It like clears the space for me to be able to direct my focus and have 100% of my focus on whatever it is I'm thinking about, instead of being almost like instead of my thoughts kind of being like oddly diffused, like thinking about things in the thoughts and memories and sounds and music and things in the background that are just usually there, like it sweeps it all away, and all of a sudden it's like the lights come on. And but that night in particular, I think I took it must have been maybe 10 a.m. Uh-huh. And it was an all day late into the night thing. I mean, it started off, like I said, it just started off like I just was able to think really clearly, and everything was really calm, and I felt really, really good. I started to feel like cognitively almost superhuman. Like, not that I thought I could do some kind of quantum math or something, but I felt like I had control over my ability to direct my own thoughts and focus on something in long stretches of time that I don't think I've ever had. I don't think I've ever had that kind of clarity where I could focus on one thing indefinitely without it being interrupted by anything. No peripheral thoughts or any of that kind of thing.
Let me interrupt you real quick. You've had Adderall on 1 or 2 occasions too, right?
Yes, I have.
How do you compare contrast?
Well, Adderall is like, it's like a really finely developed speed. Like, it's finely tuned to your brain. It doesn't have a bunch of extra crap that other like speed, like recreational illicit speed has. It does speed you up, and it's like it focuses you only because it's focuses you in, like, I guess in the same way coffee does. It gives you an alertness, more of a physical more of your like a physical alertness that kind of manifests as like mental alertness. This was completely different. There was not an ounce of speediness to it. It wasn't like I stayed awake way, way longer than I normally would have. But it wasn't like I was being induced into wakefulness like Adderall or like caffeine or ephedrine or one of those kinds of drugs where you're actually being, whether you like it or not, you're going to stay awake. It was like I was just the mental clarity. Almost there was just no room for being tired or having any kind of like fatigue. I guess mental fatigue. But it wasn't like an induced state of wakefulness. It was just like my brain was just almost felt like my brain was a little bit floating separate from my body, like it was just its own thing. And fatigue body like. I think it was maybe my body eventually became fatigued, but my brain never did. I think I had to actually force myself to lay down and then eventually I think I just ran out of gas and fell asleep.
Yeah.
But it was, I would absolutely recommend that anybody that is new really ease in to taking this. I would say I would start off.
So you're not sticking around with 800 milligrams per dose?
No, it was a grinding. It was grinding and became a little uncomfortable. And I woke up the next day extremely fatigued. I had a hard time holding focus. It was almost like I had borrowed ahead my ability to focus, like borrowed it from like the next 2 days, and it wasn't good. It also toward the end I had that kind of an overwhelming, almost like teeth grinding sort of it was too much. It was way too much, and I'm lucky. It was a stupid thing to do. I was excited about it. And I didn't read the package, and I really should have been much more careful about it. And I feel really silly about it, but. Let my mistake be a cautionary tale to anybody out there that's trying to that's experimenting with this drug. I think this drug is a miracle. It's a miracle drug. Like from the things I've seen and read, and the testimony of guys like Dave Asprey and other guys that have used it, use it for a decade without any real trouble. I guess it came out in the mid '90s. And there haven't been any real negative side effects.
Yeah, if it's doing anything bad, it's not doing anything bad that people have really noticed yet. It's like, who knows, maybe it makes you drop dead 25 years in, but like nobody's been using it for 25 years, so nobody knows yet. I mean, the question marks about modafinil are that it's still not exactly clear what it's doing in the brain that makes it work, and so that's still a little bit of a question mark for people. But yeah, it doesn't seem like any known downsides seem to be based on around the sleep deprivation that can happen as a result of it if you're taking it at the wrong time of day, or just taking so much of it that you're shortchanging yourself on sleep because eventually it needs to catch up. But actually, that was more of a ringing endorsement from you than I expected, because I mean, it sounded like it was a rough ride having coming down off that amount.
It was way too much, obviously. The jury's still out for me personally, only because I've taken it since then. It took me several days to fully recover. I was kind of in a fog, kind of had a weird kind of headaches. I wasn't able to hold my focus for long. It was like I was agitated and irritated. Almost like for anybody out there that has taken MDMA or something like that, kind of like how you feel after you do something like that. And I don't think that's usually how people feel. Obviously, it had something to do with the extreme dosage. I have taken it since, and I think I have reaction that maybe not everybody has. Like I feel like I've done 50 milligrams, I've done 100 milligrams, and I've done 150 milligrams. And my feeling is that I probably can't do it in any more than 50 or 100 milligrams, and it has to be spaced out because I feel like even if I go 3 days using it on a relatively low dosage, I still have that kind of a foggy feeling slow and kind of like sluggish, almost like a depressive feling.
You're talking when you stop using it after like 3 days in a row, that happens on day 4?
Yes. Yeah, actually, no. It was like if I took it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'd be fine Saturday, Sunday, and Monday I just get hammered. So it's a lot like, the MDMA users call that, Black Monday. If you take it on a Friday or Saturday, you have a terrible Monday. Huh. But that doesn't seem to be the average person's experience. So, if I were to recommend it, I would definitely recommend anybody that's interested in it to give it a shot. I would absolutely start out with no more than 50 milligrams. Try it on an empty stomach and see. In my mind, like, the experience of it is profound. I didn't know that I had the mental capacity that I felt while on it was something I've never, ever had. It was like just a super calm, super relaxed, hyper focused, hyper present, almost undistractable, like cognitive performance that I have never, ever in my life experienced under any circumstance. Caffeine, Adderall, ephedrine, any of those kind of drugs, there's no comparison in my mind. Again, for me personally, the jury's still out. I will definitely proceed with caution and see. This may not be the thing for me to, because I haven't found my dosage, and I may not find a dosage that works. It may be that I'm borrowing ahead of whatever those the serotonin or whatever it is that is being activated when you're on that, and then I'm left to feel not so good, and it would make it ultimately not worth it for me. But I would definitely say try it on yourself and see how you react, and just take it slow, and just be mindful, because it's your brain chemistry. But man, for what I've seen so far, I can see where it's a pretty amazing drug, and I would definitely recommend it.
Cool.
At least recommend trying it.
Yeah, it's worth a walk in the park. All right, so that is the end of my interview with Ben about modafinil. I feel like I've thrown the whole episode for a loop here. I thought we were going to be talking about Aniracetam almost exclusively, but then went off on a wild hair and got you a modafinil interview to boot. So always going that extra mile for you here at Smart Drug Smarts. Hopefully that didn't confuse the hell out of everybody. I'm going to editorialize for a moment here, because Ben is a really good friend of mine. I know him really well, and I know he won't mind my saying this, but I was a little bit surprised actually in his interview, because he was seemed like ebulliently, positive about modafinil, and having had talked with him earlier about it, he really had a hard couple of days there, and I was not expecting his review to be quite as positive as it was. I know that sometimes people can get kind of the opposite of camera shy. You put a microphone in somebody's face and there's that hey, I'm being interviewed, and I'm wild about being interviewed. I don't know. I just wonder if he might have been a little bit excited about the whole prospect of being on a podcast, and if that might have amped him up a little bit. Anyway, just bear all this with a grain of salt. But like I'm always saying about everything that we're talking about on this podcast, all of this is really such subjective experience. It's hard to put a pin on things. I would characterize my experiences with modafinil as not being nearly as exciting either on the upside or the downside. I mean, I haven't really felt any downside myself at all with modafinil, but on the other hand, I wouldn't characterize the upside of the experiences that I've had with modafinil nearly as positively as what Ben described. Then again, I've never in my life taken more than 200 milligrams at a time, so I shudder to think what 800 milligrams might be like. I think we'll kind of wrap this up here. I have dipped into the caffeine at this point, so I am no longer on Aniracetam and Aniracetam alone, unless I feel like since I'm going to be drinking a bunch of coffee over the next couple of hours, this is no longer a valid experiment from this point out. But I'm giving Aniracetam 2 thumbs up on the first go-round. I definitely feel like it did give me sort of a clarity and focus and interest in what I'm doing boost for a sustained bout of hours, and that's what more can you ask for in a nootropic? Not much. But let's move on over into the ruthless listener retention gimmick.
Smart Drug Smarts. Ruthless listener retention gimmick.
Okay, so I mentioned earlier that I have acquired some desmopressin. What is desmopressin, you might ask? It's a nootropic, of course, which is why we're talking about it. And I think actually later on we're going to do a full episode, probably within the next few weeks, all about desmopressin. So I'm just going to scratch the surface of it now, but basically what it is it's a synthetic analog of something which naturally occurs within your body called a vasopressin. Vasopressin does a lot of different things, but one of the things it's involved with in a not fully understood mechanism is that it helps you lay down memories. And by sort of giving your brain more vasopressin vasopressin than it normally has, or by adding desmopressin, which is synthetic and it normally doesn't have any of, you're able to, for a short time, for a matter of hours, increase your ability to lay down memories and sort of become a super memorizer. So one of the things I've been kind of meaning to do for a while is to try to learn a different keyboard style than the QWERTY keyboard that we normally use to type things on. I'm a pretty decent typist. I just timed myself out at 63 words per minute with 100% accuracy, which is, better than average by far. And I mean, shucks, I've been touch typing for, many, many years now. But supposedly by switching to this other keyboard style, if you're a fairly fast typist on QWERTY, you're going to be a really, really, really freaking fast typist on this thing called a Colmac keyboard, which is sort of a rearranging of where the letters sit, where your fingers sit relative to the letters on a traditional computer keyboard. So anyway, I'm thinking I want to do a desmopressin experiment on myself while trying to learn this new Colmac keyboard system. And this won't be a one day or, a block of hours thing. It'll be, certainly over the course of a couple of weeks. And it's supposed to be a pretty painful process, because if you can imagine, going from your fingers automatically knowing exactly where all the keys are on a keyboard to them being completely discombobulated and moved around, it's supposed to be pretty nasty. But the question is just how quickly can your fingers relearn something that they had previously, been doing for years and years and years a different way. And so I'm hoping that the desmopressin will help me with that. And luckily, I've got a little bit of data on what sort of the standard times it takes people to rewire their brain from one keyboard configuration to another is. So I want to see how I can do relative to that. Obviously, this is another one of these sort of single-person experiments that is not necessarily statistically relevant for anything, but it'll be interesting to see. It'll certainly be worth an episode. Anyway, that's the Ruthless Listener Retention Gimmick.
Smart Drug Smarts, the podcast so smart, we have smart in our title twice.
Okay, so that was it. Episode 19. We did have an interview in there, kind of, sort of, and I mean, the self-interview thing is a little bit weird. Hopefully this wasn't like the stupid narcissistic episode or whatever, but, well, shucks, if you're still listening at the end of the episode now, I guess you've already forgiven me, so thank you for bearing with me on this long overdue and somewhat impromptu episode, which luckily actually is very on topic as far as nootropics, and yeah, now that I've got a little bit of Depronil, a little bit of desmopressin, and a little bit of Aniracetam all within stone's throw of me. Definitely more of the straight up nootropic material in the offing. So I've made a pledge to myself that Saturday is going to be my Smart Drug Smarts Day. I'm going to make sure that a significant portion of my Saturdays from here on out are dedicated to this podcast. Therefore, I think by giving a good half day every week on Saturdays, I will be able to keep up the weekly production schedule and all that you've come to expect and a lot more, since hopefully you haven't come to expect too damn much yet. What else? Show notes for this show will be online at www.smartdrugsmarts.com, including the links to anything that has been mentioned here. I will be back to you with the same time, same podcast. Well, you know better than to believe the same time, and the same unflagging commitment to helping you fine-tune the performance of your own brain. Have a great week and stay smart.
You've been listening to the Smart Drug Smarts podcast. Visit us online at www.smartdrugsmarts.com and subscribe to our mailing list to keep your neurons buzzing with the latest in brain optimization. Smart Drug Smarts should be listened to for entertainment purposes only, although some guests on the show are medical doctors, most are not, and the host is just some random guy. Nothing you hear on this podcast or read at smartdrugsmarts.com should be considered medical advice. Consult your doctor and use some damn common sense before doing anything you think might have a lasting impact on your brain.